Just want to remind you guys, this episode is presented by PrizePicks. Download the app today. Use the code JUICE to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. What's going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Cody and Derek, of course, back with another one, guys. Well, guys, free agency is almost here. We are very, very close, almost to that point. And hey, we wanted to talk about some of the top options for the Indianapolis Colts at the safety position. We've already looked at the cornerback group, so if you haven't already, be sure to go check that out. But Derek, it's very obvious the Indianapolis Colts are going to be looking to address their secondary in some shape or form. And there's a lot of players that can help them do that in free agency. And, you know, I think corner, there's a ton we looked at and even some more that we didn't even talk about that either are potentially going to get cut or, you know, whatever else at that point maybe weren't cut. So, yeah, all that to say, it's a deep safety class as well. There's a lot of good players here that I think could do a lot of good stuff for the Indianapolis Colts. What's your impression here of this safety room and what the Colts might need to do this offseason?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's as star-studded as it was last year, but I'll tell you what, Cody, it's pretty close. This is the second year in a row where there is a very strong safety room that for this free agency group that's going to be very appealing to a lot of teams. So you do have a mixture of older veterans and some younger guys in here, but there's a lot of names here, Cody, that if you're looking to replace Julian Blackmon, there are quite a few good names here that you can definitely take advantage of.
Yeah, and I know we even heard some news that last offseason, the Indianapolis Colts were very much interested in Xavier McKinney, and obviously Green Bay a little bit more interested, brought him in, but the Colts were trying to get that done, right? So that makes you think they believe the veteran route might be the solution for them at that safety position, at that free safety position. So with that being said, Derek, I want to kind of talk about this and look at some of these guys that might make some sense, right, to pair alongside Nick Cross for the foreseeable future. And you're right, there's a ton of different guys, different ages. You know, some guys are in their mid-20s, some guys in their late 20s, and there's a few guys even that are a little bit older. So let's talk about, I think, the number one guy from a lot of standpoints that a lot of people have talked about. Of course, we're mentioning Javon Holland, the Miami Dolphins safety. Out of all these top options, Derek, I think he's the youngest guy out of all these top options. Yeah, he is. He's only 25 years old. So, Derek, he's a guy that obviously had kind of a down year with Miami last year, but back in 2023, he was a really good safety. He was really, really good, and I think he could potentially fit really well with the Indianapolis Colts here, not just in the short term, but also in the long term a little bit more. What's your thoughts on Javon Holland?
Yeah, Javon Holland, a 25-year-old safety that has had a few injuries recently, but a guy that plays physical, he plays fast, and it's certainly the type of safety that you would want in this Lou Anarumo defense where, they're flying around all over the place and, a guy that can play in coverage, but also play downfield, and that's one of his specialties. And Javon Holland, you're right, he's still in the middle of his prime, 25 years old, and, can only get better. So, Javon Holland is already one of the most sought after guys in this group. I mean, no doubt that he is only going to get better as long as the coaching is there. And, Javon Holland, he's going to cost you a good penny, but definitely worth the investment if you're wanting to take a young safety that's, still going to actually get better than what he already has been.
Yeah, absolutely. So he would be a really great name there for the Indianapolis Colts to go after. Another guy that I think would be a good potential fit here for the Colts would be Justin Reed, the free safety from the Kansas City Chiefs. Derek, we know Kansas City trying to pay a bunch of different guys. It looks like Justin Reed will hit free agency. He's 28 years old. But Derek, he has played at a pretty high level for the last number of years in Kansas City. And I think he'd be a real good veteran fit here for the Indianapolis Colts and a guy that has a little bit of experience, at playing at a high level, but also Derek is still young enough where you can sign him in a multi-year deal and feel very good about that. So what are your thoughts here, man, when it comes to Justin Reid? Probably the guy that when you look at it overall from a production standpoint, probably the number one guy. But I mean, he's been one of the better safeties that probably doesn't get talked about enough, Derek, in the NFL the last number of years. Last year, just want to pull up this stats here with Kansas City. He played in 16 games, had 61 tackles. He had also 2 interceptions as well. And another thing, Derek, about him is the last 3 seasons he's played in 16 or more games. So he's been healthy as well and dependable back there. So what are your thoughts on Justin Reid?
Yeah, so it's kind of ironic, Cody, that, again, he's been super reliable. It's almost I don't know if there's numbers to back this up or if I'm just being superstitious. But, when a guy that has been super healthy moves to another team, just to me specifically, it feels like he's just not going to be quite as healthy as he was in the previous situation. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it. But, I mean, did go from Houston to Kansas City, and it fixed whatever issue he was having because he did miss a few games in Houston. But like you said, he's only missed 2 games in Kansas City in the last 3 years. So not a problem at all. There's probably a few guys in this safety group that have been a little bit more productive in some of the numbers than Justin Reid is. But like you said, the number one thing we're looking for is a guy that is going to be dependable, right? And he has to be available for this team. And there's very few safeties in this market that have been more available than Justin Reid. Don't know if he'll stay with Kansas City or not, but it's definitely going to cost a pretty penny to convince him to go elsewhere because, you're in Kansas City, you're going to be competing for a national or for a Super Bowl anyway. So there's that enticement. So, do you take less money from the Kansas City Chiefs to stick around or do you want to go chase that bag? It's all going to depend on that. So, it definitely would be a great option to get Justin Reid because you're right. A guy that is a veteran in this group, but is still in his prime when it comes to his age. So, and the production has been good every year. So you can't really go wrong.
Yeah. Now, there's a number of guys here that would be interesting to me, Derek. The guy that's actually number 2. So NFL.com, they're actually a little bit more high on this guy than I think a lot of people are. I'm talking about Trevon Moehrig of the Raiders last year. He's another young guy, Derek, that would come in and potentially be an option for the Indianapolis Colts. And he's been relatively healthy as well. He's 6'2", 202. Last year, Derek, with the Las Vegas Raiders, he played in all 17 games. He had over 100 combined tackles, 2 interceptions, 10 passes defense. So, I mean, he's another good option, another good young option here, Derek, if the Indianapolis Colts elected to go that route. What would be your thoughts on Trevon Moehrig?
Yes. Trayvon Moehrig, I have seen a lot of people bring that name up. Spot Track even has his market value set as, around 16 million for this upcoming class. So, I mean, this is a guy that's been ultra productive, with the Raiders. In 3 of his 4 seasons, Cody has not missed a game. So if that tells you anything, has played over 1,000 snaps in those 3 out of those 4 seasons, had over 100 tackles last year with the Raiders, and had a couple interceptions to go along with it. So this is a guy that's, that's around and he doesn't get hurt and, he's available and, makes those plays, had 6 interceptions in his first 4 years. Has had 5 in the last 2 years. So, has picked up the pace a little bit in his production. And yeah, I mean, again, does he fit the mold of the type of safety that Lou Anarumo and Chris Hewitt want to bring into the system? I have seen a lot of people mention that already. So I would definitely be very intrigued by him if he were to come to Indy. As we said, guys, today's episode is sponsored by PrizePicks. Now, what is PrizePicks? PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Instead of battling against thousands of other players across platforms, you're basically picking 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're choosing more or less on those stat projections to be able to watch those winnings roll in. It's very easy. Do you guys want to play along at some of PrizePicks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and UFC fighter Sugar Sean O'Malley? Well, if you guys sign up today, you can find the community plays under the promos tab of the app to view the entries of some of the biggest names on the platform and be a part of that as well. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 just like that with NBA, NHL, and college basketball entries today on PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Like a lot of other things, guys, they also offer injury insurance, so your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So if someone exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player projection won't count against you and the rest of your entry stays live. So it's a great bounce back for that one. What I love about the app as well, guys, is it's not just sports like NBA, NHL, football, and tennis, and baseball, and all these other things, but there's also a lot of others that go into it as well. If you like to place entries on video game situations like Call of Duty, CS2, Apex, if that's something that appeals to you, there's a wide variety of sports and video games and everything else that you can place entries on. And I love how expansive it is. Even just looking at the NBA, there's entries you can make with turnovers, with points. You can do combo deals, dunks, field goals attempted, all of these different things. So there's just so many different ways to make money off of these entries. Be sure to download the app today and use the code JUICE to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup.
Another name that would be interesting as well, another young guy, of course, we're talking about Cameron Bynum, the safety from the Minnesota Vikings. Derek, I know that's one of your favorite guys, and just like Maureen, he has been very durable. The last 3 seasons, Derek, he has not missed a game with Minnesota, and last year actually had 96 tackles and 3 interceptions. So he had probably the most interceptions out of any of these guys so far. He's a little bit older than Maureen, but not much. He's only, 27 years old. So
yeah,
he is a young player that I think would fit exactly what the Colts are looking for at free safety, a guy that can take the ball away and has been very productive with Minnesota and their defense.
Yep. Like you said, 7 interceptions in the last 3 years, a guy that can do a lot of things and, had 137 tackles in 2023. That's God tier. How many tackles that is for a safety. Almost had 100 this year. Yeah, I mean, I would salivate at the mouth to get Cameron Bynum on this team. Again, just definitely a ball hawk and, also a guy that knows how to get tackles, man. These last 3 years has had at least 80 tackles in each season. So makes a lot of sense. And again, that number is probably about very similar to where everybody else is at right now that we've talked about. Everyone is in that $15 to $18 million range. I mean, that's what you got to pay nowadays, guys, if you want the elite safeties of the league, and a lot of these guys that we mentioned could potentially be that if they, continue to stay healthy and they keep doing what they're doing.
Well, there's a couple other names that would be kind of some. I would say this next guy is definitely a risk, but it could be potentially a high reward guy. Talking about Talanoa Hufanga, he was a player that started off with a huge impact for the San Francisco 49ers earlier in his career. He actually was an all-pro in 2022, Derek, and then the injuries and some inconsistent play over the last couple of years, it's led to, him being on the open market at this point. But he's only 26, so he's still got some time here, Derek, to potentially turn it around. but this could be definitely a guy that would be I would say a high risk, potentially high reward type of player. I'm not sure if the Colts are kind of in that scenario right now where they need that type of player. But I mean, depending on the price, if you were able to bring him in and say, we think you can get back there, maybe that's an option they do. But I don't know for like a number one safety if that's something that the Colts want to go after necessarily. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's all going to come down to, like I said before, it's going to come down to Lou Anarumo and how he feels about a certain type of player. And you're right, for a high risk, high reward. I'm not sure how I feel about it, Cody, because I do want to give. I am in that situation where I want the Indianapolis Colts to start making moves, but it depends on what you mean by high risk, because there's high risk guys that, they haven't had the production and they're just asking for more money because their situation they were in weren't as good. There's the injury problem that could potentially be a thing, or it could just be a line of, anyone is virtually high risk if you're going to pay the kind of money that you and I are thinking the Indianapolis Colts need to pay in order to bring some of these guys in here. There's always risk involved, and some of these guys are definitely more high risk than others. But, you're right. It's starting to get to the point where if you're the Indianapolis Colts, you can't be conservative anymore. It's just not in the cards. And if you're Chris Ballard, I get it. Like, you want to make the moves that you want to make moves to make your team better. You also don't want to ruin the potential of the future for the team. But I mean, at this point, it's all about fan perception. It's about the fans thinking that you are helping this team go into the right direction. And the only way you're going to do that is by making some big moves to show that, hey, we're going to at least try. If we're going to go down, we're going to go down swinging with this.
Yep. So those are some of like the bigger name safeties, some of the relatively young guys. Now, there's a couple other names you could throw out there. I mean, we know Justin Simmons' name well, Derek, because everybody wanted him in Indianapolis a year ago, and didn't obviously happen. But he is out there. He's 31 years old, so a little bit older there. You have, I mean, a guy like Harrison Smith is even out there. He's very old. And then there's a few other names that people have thrown out there. I'll just read a couple of them out for you. Elijah Molden is a player with the Chargers, that potentially could be a sneaky fit there. Andre Sisco of the Jacksonville Jaguars, he's still a young player. Just like Hufanga, he started off really strong in his first couple seasons and then kind of tailed off the last couple of years. I will say I could see them adding more one of these other guys, maybe as kind of a depth piece, and that's about it. Like, I could see them realistically doing that, but I do think you're right. You need to add probably one of these top guys to make it happen. You need to have a clear-cut number one free safety. You need to add a guy that's going to be, fit like a glove in Lou Anarumo's scheme, and a guy that you could trust back there. I think you really need to have that guy, whether at corner or at safety. You need to have some players you can depend on. So we'll see how it plays out. But, guys, let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. That'll do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, guys, go Colts.